All right, a very good afternoon to all of you present here. Today being National Youth Day, we had thought that we would like to have a little discussion on the role of today's youth in shaping the future of the country. It seems that the youth or the not-so-youth is not so much interested in how the country is going to be shaped for the future. Nevertheless, we would exchange some ideas, those of us who are here. It's not always the quantity that matters, but also the quality of discussions that take place. So in that spirit, we will kick off this panel discussion for this afternoon. And may I invite our moderator, Mr. Ashoke Viswanathan, to kindly take his seat right in the middle there. Ashoke Viswanathan, does he need any introduction to you people? Yeah? Because in one word, you can define him as one of the few people, or almost one or two people, among the one or two people in Calcutta who can speak on any subject, either in English or in Bangla, without using a word of the other. Okay, and so that is a species that is being almost extinct now. And Ashok has this great quality, apart from the fact that he is a well-known filmmaker and is associated with the Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, a theatre person for several decades now, and one of his plays is also being performed on the 14th. On Saturday, I can do a little publicity for that, yeah? And this is at the ICCR at 6:30 or 7? 6:30, and it's a walk-in, so everybody is invited. And this is the same Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. So I'm sure that's going to be an interesting experience too. So Ashok wears many hats. This morning I had a lecture at the NITTTR, as it's called, the National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research, and I was also talking there about decision making and the 6 kinds of hats that you can wear as a model towards arriving at a decision when there is a problem solving case at hand. I would also like to call the panelists onto stage. Torunima Panwar from Loreto College. Yeah, you people can clap a little louder. Yeah, okay. Torunima, you can take any seat, which you prefer. Moyubi Mukherjee from Presidency University. Fresh from having won the Damayanti Shield last year, right? And if I remember right, and also a wonderful crisp and well thought out and well worded speech that she gave at the inaugural ceremony of the Presidency University at the Prinsep Guard. So, Moyuri, we hope to hear some inputs from you. Then we have Shomo Shekhar Gangopadhyay from Scottish Church College. Shomo is also no stranger to the world of debating and discussions. I know him since he was debating from class 9, I think, right? Yeah, from class 9 at Birla High School. And he has come a long way now and is also playing an active role in the annual festival of the spoken word that takes place, organized by the Calcutta Debating Circle. And I see him as a familiar face there for the last 2 years. We have Prakriti Rudro from Sri Sheraton College. I have had the honor and pleasure of listening to Prakriti at a couple of debates earlier, and I can assure you that she is very forceful, convinced and determined in whatever she puts across. We have Shalini Sinha from Jadavpur University. Shalini, please take any of the seats you would like. And Devanga Goswami from the NUJS. Is Devanga here? NUJS is not yet here. Okay, then we will make him join as and when he comes, if he comes, yeah? Okay, otherwise we'll start our proceedings. So without any further ado, I hand over proceedings to Mr. Ashoke Viswanathan. You see, ideally we would like to wind this up by 4:30. So you see the time, divide it by 5 plus one of your own remark. So I would suggest that initial remarks 5 minutes each, then you can get a second chance and maybe even you can lob the ball to each other over here, and they can react to what the others are saying. And finally, maybe a couple of questions from the floor. Okay? Is that okay with you, Ashoke? Fine.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to be sitting amidst architecture that takes you back in history. In a sense, we are, at the moment, transfixed at a point in history, at a juncture in history, when things pleasant and things not so pleasant are happening to us all over the world. We are finding that even as we battle those who champion plurality, we are finding that they come up trumps. We are finding that even as you try to champion the causes of the oppressed and the suppressed, you are led into a black hole. But at the same time, we are also finding that in the areas of literature and the creative arts, in science and in sports, flashes of brilliance are perceptible, not just in this country of ours, which is in a sense a truly plural country, with a multitude of languages and dialects and cultures and societies of various milieus and milieux, zeitgeists and Weltanschauungs. In such a country as this, what could be better than sitting at a post-colonial juncture in the Victoria Memorial and talk about the role of youth in shaping the future of a country which seems to be at its crossroads. Let us hear what the young participants have to say. They will initially have 5 minutes to make their initial statements, and then we can go on, we can interrogate, we can cross-question, and try to come to some sort of a synthesis, even if dialectic or polemical, about what can possibly happen, or what is happening, or whether we do have a hand in the designs of fate or of kings. So, may I request Darunima Panwar to begin the proceedings. Darunima.
Hello. Good evening everyone. I think it's an appropriate time to say that. When we talk about the role of today's youth in shaping the future of the country, I think one thing that is greatly neglected by the so-called adults in the society is actually the role of youth and our voices. One thing that I've really noticed is that everything that is raised as an issue that doesn't sit well with the status quo is termed as an issue that isn't for the people. When you talk about the concept of feminism, we see it being interpreted in so many different ways across so many junctures in life. We see people interpreting feminism according to what they think is appropriate. Now, I know that the moment I say feminist, my perception or that I am a feminist, the way people perceive me changes so vastly. Because usually you perceive a feminist as a bra-burning woman who is looking for, okay, please lay emphasis on the word woman, because you automatically assume that a feminist can only be a woman. That is the problem with our society. The call for women's rights is one of the most neglected calls in our society as of now. Our country is in shambles when you see an 80-year-old woman being raped by using a Harpic bottle by 5-6 men who enter her house. This is the reality, and her bleeding, and no one cares about what happens to this woman. When you quote this case as another Nirbhaya type case, terming it as the rarest of rare case, we forget that there are so many cases that aren't even reported. So many cases of familial abuse that we fail to acknowledge. My question is why? Why is it so convenient for us to ignore issues that affect others? Here is where the youth come into perspective. People might term this generation as a generation of millennials who are obsessed with their cell phones and will put up a status on Facebook about anything and everything. But in life, you're a contradiction of that. Because the moment the youth decides to put up a status on Facebook and not act upon the status in their actual actions, we are actually failing the entire purpose. Because we come out as paradoxical people who don't have a set of beliefs and we can't follow their actions. How is that making us different from the so-called status quo that exists in society? Because they are doing exactly the same. Out in public life, we cherish certain values, and in our real life, in our private life, we don't follow these same principles that we propagate to others. So practice before you preach is something that the youth can actually advocate for. I have a lot of friends who are trying to work towards making India a country that is more free in terms of our expression, more equal, more liberal, more understanding. People need to understand that the way we are educated at this point also makes a big difference in terms of our participation in public life. Because our education is so orthodox, it's so rigid, okay, it does not promote individuality. Individuals do not understand how to express the sentiments that they are feeling. It becomes difficult for a person who's just being taught a certain thing and being told that whatever is being taught in the book and is the ultimate truth. Your experiences don't matter. They do not. Because that is the sad reality that we're living in. I study in a university that values my rote memorization more than my analytical skills. It is paradoxical because then what is the value of my expression, of my understanding? Here is where the youth comes into perspective. Because it's only us who are capable of change. Whether it be as minor as going to an underprivileged school and teaching and giving like 2-3 hours of your week, not even of your day, 2-3 hours of your week, you should see the amount of difference that it makes in the lives of these students. Because in you, they see leaders. In you, they see something that they can envision to be. And at times, I feel like we don't give ourselves the credit. We don't think that we're worth enough. Okay, we don't think that we can inspire others. But that isn't true. Because even with our minute achievements, we are way beyond what anyone else can envision to do in their lives. Which is the reason why I was talking about us going and participating and interacting with these people from these schools. Even let's take it like lower level schools who do not have the access to the same kind of facilities that we do. It makes a difference if we go ahead and approach them and talk to them at their level, because that shows them that you as an individual are worthy of being spoken to. You as an individual, you have your worth. So the understanding of this individual worth is also very important. And when we talk about participation of the youth in today's country, that is India, in India, participation of the youth in politics, it's so minuscule. Because I live in a time when I as a woman, if I say that I want to become a politician in the future, I am met with the same things, same concerns, that you're a girl, ladki ho, stay at home, get married, get an academic job in a secure profession so that your life or your being isn't threatened by the society. It's really sad to live in a society where politics is treated like it's the scum, okay, where you look at politicians who are just dirty, filthy, people who you don't want to indulge with, but at the same time, they're the people that you're voting for, okay. So you are okay with voting and living in a system and not bringing about any change, and it's okay for you to do that. Hence, youth need to participate in education, in women's rights, and also in politics in order to bring productive change in this society. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarunima, not only for your speech, but for your interest in semiology. You understood my sign and finished within the moment. I thought that was a well thought of speech, and several points came to the fore. She says that one of the ways that youth can shape the country is by having a voice. At the moment, youth doesn't have a voice at all. Secondly, she talked about how feminism was so stereotypical. You're viewed as this bra-burning, Germaine Greer kind of person, even if you talk sense. And what Judith Butler, the famous sociologist and current-day high priestess of feminism, said, that actually gender is something which is created. Gender doesn't exist. that's something very important if you read Judith Butler, but this is not the place or the time for a post-colonial discourse. But the next important thing that you said is that the kind of incidents of rape and molestation, both in the north and in the south, and it was thought to be a kind of a domain of the Jats and the Haryanvis, but we find similar things happening in the south too, and perhaps in the east and the west. Is it because they were not reported before? Or is it because we are now becoming more sensitive? And even as we hear of some incidents, she says there are many others which are not reported. And were not Jessica Lal to take up the case, you know, the sister of Jessica Lal, we would have known nothing about Jessica. So sometimes the media is doing its duty, sometimes it's not. And she talked about this oxymoronic reality in which we say one thing and do another. We don't practice what we preach. And the orthodox system of education as it exists in the university today is stifling. It stifles the individual spark. Something that Weinstein Auden had spoken of way back in his famous poem, The Unknown Citizen. He'd said that, you know, man was reduced to a statistic, JS stroke M stroke 07 stroke 378. And he ends off his poem by saying, was he free? Was he happy? The question is absurd. Had anything been wrong, we should certainly have heard. So that was a very content-rich speech. Thank you, Tarunima, once again. And we now request the speaker from Presidency University, Moyuri Mukherjee, to come up with her exhortation.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So we're talking today about the role of youth in shaping the future of a country. And whether you call an adult or adult, it's important to realize why the youth is considered the mechanism for social change. And that's what I want to talk about today. I think the youth has angst. I think the youth has the power to question, the ability to not accept. And that is what I think is what causes change in the first place. Because once you begin accepting the things that happen to you, that's when change halts. I come from a university that has seen a lot of student movements and still sees a lot of student movements, and I'm a great believer in the power of a student movement. Because I think that the first step is to question what you're being told if you want to see change. So while I might not necessarily agree with Tarunima's idea about, you know, if you're, or her characterization of what a feminist is or how a feminist should be, I think it is when you're young that you say that no, if I want to be a bra-burning feminist, I will be. And if I want to be a feminist in a salwar kurti, I can do that as well. So youth is the time when you're exposed to a lot of different people and you see a lot of differences in the world, but you question them and you don't have to agree with them, but you can necessarily accept that they exist. And once you do that, I think that's the first step for social change, because you need to remember that, or what I think personally, is that you can't ever have social change by risking social integration. And if you want social integration, it's important that you take all beliefs and everything into account. So, which is why I think that, you know, when you're an adult, the problem is you become a little short-sighted and you think that it's necessarily your opinion which is the correct one. But when you're young, you see the world in so many different shades that you realize that, like, our differences make us unique and it's okay to celebrate our differences as well. So I think the youth are the future of the country because this is a truth that they still have the time to accept. But is everything fine? No, not necessarily. And the problem with that is, the problem I think is that like the youth, sometimes they don't realize how big the movement that they are a part of is. And the reason is that because everything in the world tends to happen in multitudes today. So what ends up happening is that you believe in a certain cause because someone else is believing in it. And because you're young, you get influenced. And it might work in many ways, but what's highlighted is the negative impact of this influence more than anything. You're doing something because your friend is doing it, or you're doing something because someone else has told you it's right, and you can't see it for what it is. But does that necessarily go away when you become an adult? It doesn't really, because perspective is not something that necessarily comes as time passes, right? It comes with a different, perspective is not something that will come to you just when you're older. So to say that the youth are easily influenced, to say that the youth get swayed by various fads or whatever that is gripping the world, that is sensationalist at that moment, is, I think, to view the youth poorly. So I have a lot of hope that the youth will achieve a lot for this country. And I say this for many reasons. I see it every day actually in college, where I do think that there are people who question for the right reasons. And and I think primarily because there are people who say that I will not question if your reason to question is right or wrong. I will accept that you are questioning. I will accept that that is a part of what being young means. And I think that it is this angst, it is this drive, it is this power to not necessarily accept that whatever is happening for the good. I think that is what the youth's primary role is for shaping the future of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayuri. I'm reminded of a play called Man and Superman, written by Bernard Shaw, in which the principal character, John Tanner or Jack Tanner, he had a revolutionary handbook in which certain maxims were written. And at the end of the play, there is an appendix in which all those sayings are put together. One of the things is very similar to what Mayuri said, and in that one statement is, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. Now, the unreasonable man may not